are starting a little early today. I actually thought I was going to be late, and I know that you all are expecting me to be here every week, and that is at 11:30 on Fridays. What happens? 11:30 on Fridays? We are doing Friday challenges. Friday facing the lion, and facing the lion again on finally Friday group session is one that you all can call into. You can call into it. You not only can call into it, but you can be a part of the conversation. Today, we're going to be talking about grandparents and the what seems to be some sort of a trend. So if you are a grandparent, this is for you. Grandmothers, granddads, Papa, Mimi, Nana, Grandma, and basically you all can partake of this. I've been noticing the trend, and I call it a trend because I cannot understand how in the life for me that when a young adult or an adult has a child that has living grandparents, why all of a sudden the children are not going to be able to see the grandparents. And I understand, okay? Let me just put that out there. I understand that there are so many of you that have different reasons. But can I ask you something? Do you love your child? Would you do anything for your child? If you said yes to the following questions, I'd like for you to think about this. Especially in the times that we're living in, we just can't drop our children off to anybody when they're young, even when they get older, in their 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we turn to our parents or the parents, the second set of parents, one mother, one father, and their parents. If you are a grandparent and you are seeing this trend, I want you to think deeply about today's topic. We're going to talk about everything that affects our emotions. Now, what I'd like to say, and I want you to listen closely. Every matter that's under the sun is it that serious where the grandchild is no longer going to be able to see the grandparents. We have circumstances that may not allow for it. And unless those circumstances are harmful and they are harming the safety of your grandchild, your child, then that's a whole different podcast. I want you to think very deeply about today's topic because I cannot tell you when and when not to allow your parents to see their grandchildren. How do you think that it affects your child? You may be upset. You may be having some things that you haven't worked out. Today we're going to talk about how it may affect your child. And I want everybody to look into the eyes of their child or through the eyes of their child. By the way, lines are open. 1-888-721-9260. Lines are definitely open. And if you are here today or if you know of someone that's going through this, I would like all grandparents to be heard. Today is our grandparents' day because I've noticed that when I'm looking at different things on Instagram or Facebook or clips about grandparents who are talking about they are not allowed to see their grandchildren. If there is somebody that I can help today, I've done my job. No, honestly. Uh, because there are some things that I would like to say. Grandchildren. I'm setting up. I'm setting up. Just one moment. We need to talk about this. We are all about feelings, ladies and gentlemen. And to be able to put something on uh, the internet and it grows and it festers and it becomes table talk, we need to address it. So, the challenge of not being able to see your grandchild. I want you to know that there are various reasons. There are various reasons, and we're not going to get into the legal aspect. I'm here to just talk about emotions. And how many of you have actually met your grandchildren? When you are being withheld. And let's talk about the challenges you've had to meet. We're going to talk about that first because I like to look at all sides of the story. And today is finally Friday. And here's what we do on Fridays. We're able to face our challenges regarding this very subject. And we think about grandparents and grandchildren. I am a grandmother. And I want you to know that as you are with your grandchild. And if you not only are with your grandchild, but if you have them, please be grateful that you do. You guys may have a situation where you're not able to see your grandchildren for whatever reason. Sorry about that. For whatever reason, you don't get to see your grandchild. For whatever reason, I want you to think about not necessarily your right, but think about the emotional part. No matter what has happened in your life, to keep the grandchild away from the grandparent, unless there is a safety issue directly connected with that child, you are affecting your or your child. You are affecting them when you withhold that love. There's a video out now, and every time I see it, it makes me cry. And perhaps you've seen it yourself. It's about several grandkids running to their grandparents and the reaction that you get. I don't know if you've all seen it, but it warms my heart. Warms my heart to be able to see that a child could do that. And they're so free with their love. Many of you have seen your grandchildren. You have no doubt seen them born into the world, and you have formed an emotional attachment to them, and they you. The most beautiful thing about the most beautiful thing that is about the video with the grandchild's reaction is they sure love their grandparents. They run to them freely. Oh my goodness. It is such a beautiful thing. And it is such a beautiful thing that we have a call coming in that I want you guys to find it. Why do I want you to find it? Because it's going to help you. It's going to help you to understand their emotion. Can you understand the emotion? It causes distress when a grandchild is being in the middle of whatever is going on between you, the parent that has every right to make a decision. But think about it. The way they run to their grandparents. It's a beautiful love. One that any child would be so fortunate to have because their grandparent is alive and in their life. There are some people that are walking around and they don't actually have grandparents. We got a call coming in. Okay. That call is just not coming through. I'm so sorry about it. Grandparents are no doubt affected as they are wishing to see their grandchildren. There is a undeniable bond there. I want you guys to be able to identify with that. Can you identify with it, and can you, by all means, can you understand this unbreakable bond? I don't know how many of you had a relationship with your grandparents. I was not able to have a relationship with my grandmother. And you know, every week I tell you the challenge. Vibe Talk Facing the Lion podcast has challenged in so many ways. We hear stories, and you get to hear my story. And I want to be truthful with you. It's about raw honesty. And maybe you'll find yourself with this. I had a grandmother, my maternal grandmother. Paternal grandmother is dead. I've never had the opportunity to meet her. Some of you are fortunate to have all of your grandparents at one time or another in your life. And I want to talk to you for a moment. My grandmother, my mother's mother, didn't like my father's children. She didn't like my father, so she chose not to like us, my 4 siblings and I, or 3 siblings. I make the 4th. So that relationship I never had. Do I live in the past? No, I'm all about healing. I'm all about acknowledging those wounds. Some people don't want to talk about it, but to talk about it is the start of healing. And you grandparents, since you're getting the first knowledge of how it affected me, we're going to talk about that first. I never understood why my grandparent didn't or couldn't love me. And I always wished that I would have a grandmother. And I have brought this up with my mother. And my mother says, well, she was at all your appointments with me. Yes, she was, because that was her daughter. But she could not stand my father. She couldn't stand him. So it affected the 4 of us. Now, I can speak for me. I was so affected by my mother's mother. As I grew up and had my own children, I never wanted to repeat that pattern. My boys have had the beautiful privilege of developing a relationship with their mother, their grandmother, which is my mother. And I'm so thankful for it. I've seen my mother with them cook in the kitchen. I've seen my mother with them dance. I've seen her talk to them. And no family is perfect. My son, who is my youngest, he's 27 now, would super get very emotionally upset if my mother wouldn't show up. We lived an hour away, and if she said she was coming, that was what he expected. And if it didn't happen, it affected him emotionally. Did it take a toll on me? Yes. And so I would tell my mom, please, Mom, don't tell him you're going to do something for him and you don't do it, Mom. Because he's going to get affected by that if you don't keep your word. So I knew then that there was a bond there. Even when they were in school and not yet have seen their grandmother because they were in school, my child would call me from school to ask, did my grandmommy make it? He'd be so excited. Now, what is the effect for those of you who are forbidden to see your grandchild? If you've had that relationship first, then you know all too well what it means. What do they experience? I'm going to tell you my challenge. Sadness, depression. What else? Um, when we see this happens, when we see this happen, we must realize that it does cause, excuse me, it does cause a rift. We want to be able to speak on it today safely because it will affect them. What happens sometimes, that boundary is breakable because you're upset for whatever reason. For whatever reason that you're upset. But it does impact your child emotionally. If you are upset with your parents and you're in a situation of withholding your children from their grandparents, I'm going to ask you to think about it. Because I don't want to be accusing anybody of something. Are you setting clear boundaries? Because I'm a grandparent. My children say, or my son says, Mom, I don't give him a lot of sweets. But what he doesn't know won't hurt him. And so I try, because we like to spoil our grandkids. But I can truly understand the way of them raising their child. But then they don't want me to give them sweets a lot. Of course, I'm not going to give them a lot. But then when they say none, I don't know any kid that has been raised not to have sweets. You give a kid a cookie, a little bit of sweets, a popsicle, it won't hurt them. But setting firm boundaries, what you expect, what your needs are. We're doing this a little different because we want to hear from the grandparents. And I wish my caller would call back. I don't know why the line. As we are thinking about boundaries, the next thing we want to think about the consequences. You know, some parents set a firm limit on their children going to bed. There's nothing wrong with that. But if they are, or he's at my house or with me, we might be watching a movie and he gets to stay up a little bit later. And I understand that. We want to think about not violating the boundary. I'm a disciplinarian. I don't believe in you can't spank my child. You can't tell my child what to do. If they do something serious enough that is deserving of a spanking, that's what I'm going to do. I'm a disciplinarian, and both my boys have grown up nicely. When we think about our priorities, our grandchildren don't belong to us, but they are an extension of us. They will carry on our lineage. That's a beautiful thing. They will carry on our lineage. They will carry on our lineage. Sometimes there are grandparents that may not have been the safest for their grandchildren, and that's why we went over what we did. They may not be the safest. Not every grandparent has done anything accusatory for the adult child not to let them see the grandchild. But there are some cases that have happened. How do we cope with that, grandparent? How do you cope with it? What's your thought on that? Is your grandparent rights or not having the right to see your child, is that a form of child abuse? What do you think? Now, thinking about the video that I just described with the grandparents, the grandkids running to their grandparents, or the grandkids crying because they want to stay with their grandparents. Think about that bond. You form a bond. Have you ever lost something that you really loved? Have you ever had it snatched away to be no more, and there's no explanation of where did it go? Where is it? I want you to think about how devastating that could be to a child. You know, a lot of times as adults, we have our own children. And we may see our parents do things that they did to us and we didn't like it, but we don't have to bring that part into their relationship Because there are, and I know that I'm going to say this, and I want you guys to listen. Sometimes the grandparents are better grandparents than they ever were parents. Come a little closer. I said sometimes they are better grandparents than they ever were parents. How many of us have ever saw our children with their grandparents and we have to do a double take because we go, is that the same parent? Because some rules don't apply. You know, like when we were growing up, and you'll know what I mean by this, some of you, we didn't play in the front room. Oh no, you didn't do that. We didn't, that was not where we played. You know, you wonder, how come we got a front room and we can never sit in there? We knew that was not the room that we go into. As small as my places have been, I always made sure that my grandchild could play in any room there was. Why? Because I wanted him to free play as long as he wasn't endangering himself and as long as things were safe and child-proof. And my grandson did that. There was no limit. He would have toys everywhere as long as he would clean them up. You know, funny little thing happens. You know, you kind of give him restrictions. You know, it's like having the ball and you say, if the ball goes into the street, don't go and run in the street. We know that's safe for us to say that. And we know that we're not going to get backhanded by word of mouth because we told them not to go into the street where it was dangerous. So we set safe limits. Setting safe limits doesn't harm anyone. But we want you to know that when they can't see you or you can't see them, both people, grandparent and grandchild, are affected. Because what the young people, what the adult child does is not explain. And if you're out there saying to your grand or your child that your grandparents are bad people, be careful what you say. And I'm going to be very honest, and this is why we have the sessions we have. We have these sessions is because it speaks truth. There have been some really unbelievable grandparents. So we see that side too. And if you'll just stay with me, you've seen that side too. You've seen that side of where you wouldn't dare let your child be around them because of what they've done. But what are some things that would keep you or keep your child from forming a beautiful relationship? Let's tackle that for a moment. There is a lot of things going on. And I want you to think about what would be the reason. What would be the reason? What should be the reason that you would keep your child from getting to know your grandparents? And because you don't like them, or because you think they're mean, or because you guys had an argument, that's not enough to put on the table. But I want you to put some real concrete things. And if you're not listening to me right now, I want you to hear this podcast. And I want to stop playing around with this separation that these adult children are doing. Because to me, every child is a gift. We are responsible for how we're bringing them up. And just because we're older than the grandbabies, we make a choice because we're mad. We say, well, I don't speak to those people. So you don't speak to your mother, your father, whoever it is. And what you've just answered, has it been that serious where you've had to cut the cord with your grandparent and child relationship? I want you to start sifting. You might have a lot of reasons, but ask yourself, are the reasons that I'm writing down today worth my child not to be able to have that relationship, that foundation? Are you cheating that child out of love? Because some of you parents could be very selfish and say, well, we love our child. We're going to do what's best for our child. Especially, do you want to be careful if that baby knows the grandparents, if it knows grandmother, grandfather, whatever is happening, what can we do about it? We can understand that there will be conflict. What we don't want is a broken trust. Going back to me when I was a child, when I was little, I could never understand. I knew she was my grandmother, but I didn't know why she didn't like us. What did we do? What had we done to not get a grandmother's love? It wasn't until my grandmother was really in-aged, older, that I heard her apologize for whatever had happened. And you might say, well, I don't know why that took place. My grandmother lived a very long time. I was grateful for having heard my grandmother apologize, because that takes strength. I don't care what the reason was, because we're all wrapped up into why, and how you treated us. I'm willing to forgive anybody that is powerful enough to apologize. Come a little closer. I said I'm willing to accept anybody's apology. Why? Because that takes guts. All those years, I would hear people talk about their grandmother, their grandparents. You know how the teacher says, what did you do this weekend? What did you do? What did you do? A lot of my schoolmates, peer classmates, would say how they spent the night with their grandparents. And what a good time they had. And I can only refer to the times that I've seen my children have with my mother. You know, the kind of making pallets. Because my mother really did that. Made pallets for the kids. They all slept on a pallet. Those are beautiful memories. Spoiling your grandkids. Getting after them because she loved them leaves a deep impact. And so beautifully calls her grandmommy. Think about those times. To see my children and the bond that they have. Now they're older. And they can still keep those relationships because those relationships are very important. They're important, ladies and gentlemen. So we must get together. We must talk about what is alienating us to make decisions or to have a decision made where the grandparent is cut out, unless there's some kind of abuse, unless there's some kind of toxic thing going on, unless there's some kind of trauma going on. Did you figure out the thing of why your children are not able to see their grandparents? I want to talk about some things that can be painful. When you do this, alienate that child from their grandparents after having that beautiful relationship. Shock. Because the relationship is cut off. Confusion, numbness. What if they're 5 or 4? Can you explain that? Despair. We're talking about both the grandparent and their grandchild. Talked about the emotions, sadness, powerlessness, longing, and feelings of abandonment. How do you, if you made that decision and the decision was not a healthy decision, how are you going to explain that? Once you're no longer mad, once you're done being mad, and you just feel like taking the baby to see the grandparent, because you will get there. And we're talking about getting there in your time. You will not make an unhealthy decision, because some of you have made unhealthy decisions. I'm just going to say that. But you haven't thought about the consequences. Acceptance. You've come to terms with it. You may not be happy about it, the decision, but you're not fighting it. You acknowledge that that is the way it's going to be. Transformation, where your transformation is now that you're going to have to establish boundaries once again, learning how to deal with it, learning how to grow from it. Maintenance. I always talk about protecting your peace. Whatever boundary you have. Because I'll tell you what, If they do it once to you, we're talking about your adult kids, it will always and can always be a second time and a third time. What you want to do is protect yourself, but can you live with the decisions? Life goes on. I learned this week from a very dear friend of mine how fragile life really is. My grandmother, I'm going to go back to that, is no longer living. But I was glad, without thinking of any reasons why I didn't have a grandmother, one that tucked me in at night, one that I could laugh and joke with. I don't try to find out why anymore, because as I got older, I understood it. What I do love is the fact that she apologized. So I want you to know that an apology goes a long way. A long way. Can you understand that? Are you with me on trying to understand why is there such a trend? I never knew that I would be faced with that. All because of a heart-to-heart, all because of a situation, unless I was a danger. A danger. Have you filled out your paper yet as to why you haven't, and I'm talking to the adult children, why you haven't allowed your parents to see their grandchild? Something that's a part of you, they don't get the joy of seeing. Instead, you punish them. You punish them as if you were getting back. Some of our parents have honestly had no manuals. All of our parents didn't have a manual. And many of our parents did what they could do. Now, unless there are extenuating circumstances of abuse, of something that's traumatic for the child, I don't know any other reasons. Please help me out. But here's what I do want to say. To the grandparents who show up without being asked, you have no idea how much it means. You walk in with your open arms, warm hugs, and willingness to help before you even know what you need, what is needed. You hold the baby so we can shower. You wash or wash the dishes without saying a word. You bring food, comfort, and calm into a house that's been running on fumes. You don't wait for an invitation. You just show up with love, with support, with the kind of presence that reminds us we're not doing this all alone. Thank you for being the steady hands, the soft place to land, and the quiet heroes in the season. Your help isn't small. Your love isn't unnoticed, and your presence makes all the difference. To you grandmothers, grandparents that have been there. There is no perfect family. I say that again and again and again. I'm constantly saying that. So what the challenge is that every family, every grandparent, every adult, every grandchild will face from family struggles. Let it not be one that you are punishing your child, because that's what you're really doing. You benefit because you say, I'm grown, I can make my own decision. But that child goes through shock. Don't you care about your child? And again, I must stipulate, I'm not talking about grandparents who have harmed their grandchildren. I know what kind of world we live in. I'm talking about the ones that you still haven't filled out the paper to tell me what caused your decision. What was so bad that you punish your child and cut them off from their grandparents, or cut the grandparents who just cannot wait to see their child have a child? Give me some reasons. Until then, I'd like to address you as young people. The emotional impact that you have on the child. Because, kindergarten, preschool, those formative years, and I know because I was an educator, I'm a retired educator, I'm going to tell you what. All the other kids are talking about how they spent the night at their nanas, or their poppies, or their pawpaw, or their grannies, whatever you're called. Those memories are lifetime. And you know what you do when you punish your child? Your child is depleted of the memory. They go to school. And they go to school and they hear all this other stuff. And yet your parents are living. Perhaps not. They're still parents. If your parents are no longer alive, they're still parents who are taking their children to the graves. I applaud those parents, because obviously that was an important person enough to let your child know about it. And they've gotten to know their grandparents just from a simple picture. I asked my mother about my grandparent on my father's side. What was she like? Because when I was born, my grandmother on my father's side was already dead. So I didn't have the opportunity. See, I speak from experience. I'm going to say that again. I speak from experience. You parents, stop punishing your children. Stop allowing your parents to be, or stop allowing for the grandparents to even punish your children, because really I was deprived of that because it wasn't my fault that I was my dad's child. That's like saying you were born, so you don't deserve to have me. And parents know when that kind of stuff is happening. Don't allow for that. It doesn't mean that you're right because it happened. What it means is that our parents did what they knew. And that's why we have emotional shows like this podcast, things that don't go away, things that we have etched in our memory. Because you see, I'm one of those children that I didn't receive my grandmother's love. I did not know that my grandmother ever liked me. I did not never feel that. What I did feel is an older, mature person, as I am a woman, grown-up woman with my children. I felt the apology. I didn't know what it was like to hug my grandmother, because I was always afraid that she didn't love me. I'm speaking to you. Stop doing this to your children. If you have parents that are alive, make a way, because when they're in the classroom, and especially when they come back from the summer, kids are going to be doing that. If you're over there pouting or having an attitude or whatever's going on, is it so bad that you can't talk about it? You say, Miss Nisi, it's been going on for years. But you put the child in the middle of it, and you're punishing the child. And guess what? When that child grows up to be your age, as a grown adult, they're going to start saying, why did you punish me, Mom or Dad? Why did I never not see my grandparents? Give them a chance. Let them have memories. Just because my grandmother was like that towards me and my siblings, didn't mean that my mother had to carry the tray. My mother made up for that. And I saw that. My mother, actually, when she got together with her grandchildren, she was the kind of grandmother that made the palettes, fussed at them. But I also saw her even have taken it to the extreme to have raised a few of them. So I'm glad that my children had that experience. I tell my youngest right now today, whatever it is, if you're mad at me, don't take my grandson away from me because you're punishing him. And when they're going to school, that's what the kids talk about. I got to go with my pawpaw. I got to go with my granddad. I got to go with my nana. And they talk about all the things we did, good or bad. See, this makes up room for conversation. And I thought today would be a good day to talk about it because it's too much of the estrangement between the adults, young adults, and their parents. And you have children, and you start punishing your child because you say, well, they're going to do what they did. They're going to do what they did to me, unless it's extenuating circumstances. What do I mean? Abuse. But don't abuse your child when the abuse should not even be between you or the grandparent of that child, because they both suffer. Even if you say you don't love your parents, give that child opportunity to get to know. And where I come from, working in the education school systems, there's a lot of children that are in foster care. They don't know their real parents, nor do they know of any grandparents. How would you feel if a child were to come to you, or you're in conversation with a young child and they say they don't have a grandparent? They don't have one to claim. We've gotten into conversations about what our grandkids call us. You've never heard it because you don't get to see your grandkids. I remember when my second born son was having his first child. And I was so excited. I was like, what is he going to call me? What is he going to call me? And to hear him say, Nana, Nana. What a joy beyond all calls that could be. That I'm actually a grandmother. That's a privilege to me. And if you have been any kind of abuse to your grandchildren, disowning them, whatever you did or are doing, because there are some of you out there, I want to speak to you. Get that straight. Make it better today. Make your own grandparents' day. Some of us are really cut to the very cores of our souls because we've had this shock. We have been traumatized. Our grandchildren are snatched away as if some sort of typhoon has happened. We didn't even get a chance to hold on to them for dear life because they were snatched away from us. If you're in any kind of relationship and you've got grandchildren, or you're going to be a grandparent to be, I'm going to ask you that you think about that. That you think about some ways that can help you do better, be better. And if you've had any issues, that you begin your healing today. Before we end, I want to apologize to the person that was coming in, because we were going to have someone that's always in support of me, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I do apologize to you because I don't know what was happening with the phone line, but I am hoping that you'll get the opportunity to call in. I wasn't quite set up yet, so I apologize to you. I hope today has brought you comfort. I hope today has brought you healing. I do hope today that it's brought you closer to your grandchild. And for those of you who don't take the opportunity to even stretch out your hand to see your grandchildren, what is the problem? I can't even begin to not worry about my grandson. He lived with me for the first, or from 3 months to 6 years. That's a long time. We formed a bond. My son and I, we clash. We are, if you want to be honest, clash of the titans at times. We argue with words. And I've done the healing part of me. I know how important it is to have those grandparents. I'm an educator. I've been in rooms where those kids talk about their grandparents. And I've been in rooms of where those kids cry or are sad because they didn't have nothing to talk about. I've been asked to be a grandparent to people that were not related to me by blood. Hug your grandkids. And if you're a grandpa or grandmother or granddad, I'm going to ask you to find your grandkids. It's never too late. Make the effort. I love to see grandparents with their grandkids. And you always know that they're the grandparents. How does one know? Because they act different. You go, that's not the parent, that's the grandparent. Some of them look really young. I'm a young looking grandmother. And that's okay. We spoil them. We love them. Share it with somebody that you might know. Talk about it. Your grandparents, your child's grandparent, if they are alive, never take it for granted. I hope that I've answered some questions. I hope that we've done some work-throughs by asking you to list some things that you've kept your grandchildren, because maybe today is going to start a healing for you. You know, we spoke about grandparents having boundary. We don't cross those boundaries. We're talking about serious things, guys. We're not talking about just having candy and the mom and dad says they can't have any candy and you sneak a candy in their mouth. I've done plenty of that. And I'm unapologetic for it because it didn't harm him. I used to give him stuff all the time, and I would say, don't tell your parent. Don't go in there, because he'd go in there and show what he got. Because you got to sweeten up the sweetness. And a little candy never hurt anybody. And he'd go in there, open his mouth, and show his parents what he got. And I used to say, hey, if you tell your parents that I gave you this, they're not going to let you have it anymore. We're not talking about those kind of boundaries. But yes, be respectful. My grandchild lived with me for he's 6. And he lived with me since he was 3 months old. He didn't belong to me, but he had me wrapped around his finger as if I pushed him out. And sometimes we got to remember that just because they're our son's or daughter's kid, we've got to remember the other parent too. Maybe they don't know us enough to give us some type of ring. And our children start to think about it, and our children say, well, I want my child to have that too. And I want to be able to be in my grandchild's life. Nothing is so horrible that I would think not to be in his life. I want to end it on a good note. And I want you to take seriously today's challenge that the grandparents need. We talk to everybody. If you're a grandparent, I want you to hit me up on the same line, or call me on that same line, 1-888-721-9260. I apologize to Miss Perkins. Miss Perkins, I don't know what was happening with this line. because I tried to answer it. But continue to call, and we wish you guys to face more challenges and to know that you are not alone. We'll see you next time. Our podcast, don't forget, you can listen to us on any of your favorite streaming. Also, join our YouTube channel.